There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take the new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken. And you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet your new Secretary of Defense. In an absolutely stunning move last night, President-elect Trump signaled to the entire world that the woke insanity that has infested our military is officially dead. And you just met the man that will kill it. We're going to take a look at Trump's newest cabinet pick. We're going to see how liberal elites are already having a total meltdown. And we're going to find out precisely why Pete Hegseth is Trump's best decision yet. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, basking along with you in the glorious bright morn of sanity that has finally dawned upon our nation, all because of you. So if you'd like to follow along with what's going to be an absolutely epic dawn of the golden age, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we continue to feast on the spoils of victory, let's give a huge shout out to one of our sponsors who makes these videos possible, and that is our good friends over at Liver Health Formula. If you're one of the 100 million Americans struggling with all the weight gain and loss of energy that comes with a fatty liver, these patriots are going to be your best friend. Liver Health Formula is an all-natural supplement. It contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. It's manufactured right here in the USA and approved by independent American doctors. And if you click on that link below right now, you can actually try Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of blood sugar formula when you order today. So don't let a fatty liver keep you sluggish and active. Gang, as many of you know, this is personal for me. I recently lost over 60 pounds, and I can say it was one of the best decisions I ever made. So now it's your turn. Click on that link below or go to getliverhelp.com/Turley and claim your free bonus gift. That's getliverhelp.com/Turley.
That our own Pete Hegseth will be his Secretary of Defense. Pete, of course, has been a host here at Fox for a number of years. He's an Army veteran where he served in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Trump saying, quote, Pete has spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. He's tough, smart, and a true believer in America first. With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down. Wow.
The team over at Fox News got absolutely blown away last night as President-elect Donald Trump announced one of their own, Pete Hegseth, will indeed be his Secretary of Defense. You could see the emotion on everyone's faces last night, from Laura to Jesse Waters. They were clearly on cloud nine, as we all should be. And it's not just that Pete is beyond qualified. He's a combat veteran serving in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's the recipient of 2 gold stars. He's an academic from Princeton and Harvard. It's not just that. Pete, above all, is MAGA through and through, which means that he is absolutely dedicated to destroying and eradicating secular wokeness from every square inch of our nation.
Community by community, school board by school board, city by city, state by state, and across this nation, there is a Marxist political movement call it culturally Marxist, call it progressive, call it what you want, that seeks the destruction of Western civilization and Judeo-Christian values, America being the most obvious representative of that over the last 250 years. That is their goal.
And he knows what he's talking about. Pete actually co-wrote a book with our good friend, the Association of Classical and Christian Schools president, David Goodwin, on how the renaissance of classical education can lead to cultural renewal throughout our nation. And it's precisely that kind of critical and cultural thinking that Pete promises to bring to the Pentagon.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works. We're always a decade behind in fighting the last war, whereas China, we have what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war of the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, and if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I need not tell you, but the ruling establishment is up in arms over this decision. You could literally hear Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren hyperventilating when she tweeted out, quote, "A Fox and Friends weekend co-host is not qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. I lead the Senate Military Personnel Panel. God help us. All three of my brothers served in uniform. I respect every one of our service members. Donald Trump's pick will make us less safe and must be rejected." Now, unfortunately, Pocahontas probably should have thought twice about questioning the qualifications of anyone else. Sean Davis responded, "Pete Hegseth is a 20-year military veteran, a decorated combat veteran, a recipient of the Bronze Star twice, and graduated from both Harvard and Princeton. You falsely claim to be an Indian to get a job you couldn't get on your own merits. Sit down, Pocahontas." Raylan Givens tweeted out, "You're not qualified to be a senator, but there we are." And then, not to be outdone, the ultra-repulsive, fired ex-CNN anchor Don Lemon had his own meltdown over it.
Must have been hacked. And then I saw this. An official statement from Donald Trump saying, "I am honored to announce that I have nominated Pete Hegseth to serve in my cabinet as the Secretary of Defense." What? At first, some of these folks, these nominations, I said, okay, or appointments, all right, they're a little extreme, but there were some normal people in there, kind of normal, like Marco Rubio or Mike Waltz, a couple of, just regular old Republicans in there. But Pete Hegseth, the morning weekend host on Fox News, come on.
Dude, I mean, what's the deal with the bug glasses? I mean, isn't it ironic that he has such trouble actually seeing the world rightly? These aristocratic elitist wannabes are so full of themselves, they're so utterly narcissistic that they literally cannot see how soundly they were rejected on November 5th. But here's CNN's Scott Jennings to remind them of just that. He absolutely obliterates the smug ultra-leftist lapdog Carl Bernstein.
Anyone have confidence in the current leadership of the Pentagon and the way the defense situation has been operating for the last several years? I mean, from the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. We've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. I'd say I've had just about enough of the so-called insiders running the Defense Department. I think we ought to give Pete Hegseth a chance because he's got two insiders. All the criticism of him is that he's not the expected Washington pick. And I'm just saying to you that the American people just voted against the expected Washington pick. So he's got 20 years in service, Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 Bronze Stars, Princeton, Harvard. Yeah, he's on TV, but so are the rest of us.
By the way, that list you just gave,
I think he ought to be given a chance.
That list you just gave is really interesting because you highlighted a bunch of things that the civilian leadership of the country decided on. In the military, their job was just to execute. They execute.
How did it go?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
How did it go?
In terms of the decision making, you're assigning decision making responsibility to the military over things that civilians are responsible for.
So you make a good point. The civilian leadership made decisions, and then the people they put in charge of the Pentagon carried it out, and it was all pretty much a disaster. So now we have a new president who I think got elected in part because of some of those disasters, and he's going to put in some of the non-insiders in charge of not just this agency, but a bunch of them. Now, look, they've got to perform. They've got to perform. I mean, we got 53 U.S. senators that are Republicans, and Pete Hegseth, he's an American hero. The man won 2 Bronze Stars for his service, and he's been a champion for veterans. He's going to have to go up there just like everybody else and prove his knowledge of how to do this job. He's not immune from that, but we ought to give this man a chance, in my opinion.
What elitist scum. I mean, and that Abby Phillip, she is so out of her league. What would she do without her earpiece? The control room telling her what to say. It's so utterly cringeworthy watching her try to plausibly pull off moderating an even remotely intelligible political conversation. Now, unfortunately for our globalist elite, Pete Hegseth is actually just the beginning. He's par for the course of what is to come. Trump's landslide victory on Election Day signaled a profound realignment among our electorate, a realignment around what journalist Alana Newhouse of Tablet Magazine describes as brokenism. Now, as we saw so tragically on display with the botched Afghanistan pullout debacle, more and more voters have been recognizing that our public institutions and government agencies are profoundly dysfunctional. The entirety of our establishment, the legacy media, academia, federal bureaucracy, they are all characterized by an epidemic of stagnation, incompetence, and decay. And so our politics is realigning around 2 groups, what Newhouse calls brokenness on the one side and status quoists on the other. Brokenness believe that a regime is gone beyond repair. It simply cannot be reformed from within. It has to be replaced. And thus, we need total outsiders like Trump, Elon, RFK, and yes, Pete Hegseth to get that done. On the other side, you have status quoists. You saw them. CNN panelists, Don Lemon, Elizabeth Warren, and of course, the queen of them all, Kamala Harris. These are those who do, in fact, acknowledge that there is a profound brokenness to our institutions, but they still cling onto the hope, the faith, that there's still enough integrity left in our public institutions to solve the very problems, ironically, they have created. That was the Democrat campaign over the last 3 months. Stick with the status quo. Stick with the adults. And the result? The status quoists lost their worst election in 40 years. They were defeated by a massive coalition of fellow brokenness who have had enough. They've had enough with this epidemic of woke incompetence. That is what Pete Hegseth really represents. And that is why he is President Trump's best pick yet.